Okay, let's bring to order the August 23rd, 2022 Commission Zoom meeting for Gig Harbor Fire and Medic 1. We need to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any changes or amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sudich,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Urbina.
Yes.
Any future commissioner absences?
No future, but I would move to excuse both Commissioner Wilsey and Commissioner Ensie's absences tonight.
Commissioner Wilsey has already been excused. Do I have a second for Commissioner Ensie?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Communications.
No communications this week.
Thank you. We need to approve the minutes of the August 9th, 2022 commission meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sudich,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes. I said yes.
Commissioner Urbina.
Yes.
Motion passed. Voucher approval.
I'll move to approve accounts payable vouchers 197754 through 197834 for a total of $196,598.31.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sudich,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Urbina.
Yes.
Anybody here from the local that would like to speak, or any of our staff would like to bring to our attention anything from 3390?
I reached out to President Flick earlier today, and he said that the local does not have a report for this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Chief. Right back at you, Chief's report.
All right, well, this will be pretty short. I don't have anything in this segment for the chief's report, and a bunch of our staff is currently on vacation, so we don't have any reports for this section. We do have a few in the next coming agenda items.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Anything from standing committee reports?
I do have a couple things. We met for our exit meeting with the state for our audit. I was in attendance with some staff. There were no findings in the audit. It was a very short, brief meeting, which is how you want those meetings to be. And they were very, very complimentary of our staff. And they especially wanted to make sure that we were aware of the good work that Crystal did during that process, and how efficient that we were, to the point where it actually lowered our bill because the hours needed were less because we were so prepared. So I'm very thankful to the staff for that, for being well prepared. And then obviously for the no findings is a huge kudo to everything that they do. Also, on the findings from the prior audit, they reported that everything had been corrected to their satisfaction, and everything was beautiful. So I'd like to thank again Perry and Crystal and the entire staff that were involved in that. So thank you. On another note, we also met with Perry, help me out. Chief, help me out here.
Yep, our municipal advisor and bond council.
Yeah, and Perry was going to talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to let you guys know that I was also in attendance with that meeting. Chief, I'll let you sum up what happened, and then I'll chime in.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. So we met. I think we reported last week that we've already started on our timeline through the rest of the years in regard to the bond sale and our in our rating process. We're getting to a point where we're starting to move through a little more detail. and are having some detailed discussions. One of those discussions that is at the forefront of our meeting agenda was the type of bond sale that we wanted to conduct, either negotiated or competitive, which in turn is the kind of the big determining factor on whether we hire an underwriter or not. So we leaned heavily on the recommendations of our municipal advisor. That's probably one of the primary reasons why we hired them, was to help us walk through this. It's our first opportunity to do this for a number of us. And there's a number of reasons why they recommend that we do a competitive sale. And so, our tax base, the strong economy here, the assessed value and the growth, the condition of our organization, so our cash balance, little to no outstanding debt, and the size of the bond, all of those things and a number of other things lead them to believe that our best method is to just do a competitive sale. We'll package our bonds, we'll open them up for a competitive bid, and we'll go with that. And they will help us through, in coordination with our bond counsel, will help us through the remaining steps that we need to take between now and when we sell the bond. So we felt comfortable. It was a major portion of our discussion and time that took place during that meeting. And so our recommendation is to move forward with a competitive sale. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Commissioner Urbina, but there was a lot of discussion around that topic and those points, and that's kind of where we landed at this time.
Yeah, and I think you summed it up very well, but I want to make sure, is there any questions from the other commissioners about a competitive offering?
I have to assume that we're not going to take any action. There's only 3 of us here. I think something like this, all 5 need to be here before we even take any action.
It does not need to be decided today. No.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Yep, I think that was it for our meeting.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Chief. Financial report, Crystal Hackmeister.
Oh, helps if I turn it off mute. Good morning, good evening. So today a couple meetings ago, promised to come back with our mid-financial update. We did a June update in the last board meeting in July, and this one's going to cover a little more detail in the first 2 quarters of the year. And included in your packet is the presentation that we'll be sharing today. And let me just share my screen. Then move that for a second. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep, I can see it, Crystal.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so this is our 2022 mid-financial year review. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt, or we can follow up at the end with questions. Okay, so going into today's agenda, we'll assess any performance of the first half of this year. We'll talk about key issues and goals and objectives related to this year. We have a lot of key things going on. We'll do a little update on 2020 and 2021 financial audit, although I know Commissioner Urbina already went over that a little bit. Briefly go over just the budget timeline for 2023, highlights on the 2023 budget structure, and then if we have any follow-up items to discuss. Okay, so mid-year, our key updates. As you all know, I've been here a few months now. I started here in April. We went right into the audit process for the last 2-year period. That was through June and August. We also had the commissioners approve our EMS lid lift resolution in July. And then coming into August, we'll have a couple of key pieces. Obviously, the ballot measure passing for the bond, and then our state audit is complete. And then we have plenty more for the rest of the year. Okay, going into our revenue for the first 2 quarters of the year, our budget was just over 33 million. Our actuals are here at just over 18 million. Right now, all of our tax revenues are on target. The majority of our tax revenues are taxes. Our grant, which is our significant one under the grant SAFER, that has a performance period that ends in March of 2023. Our EMS transports and GEMT is on target. You'll notice actuals look a little high for the first 2 quarters of the year. This is related to GEMT and the way that those dollars come in. So that's not as a consistent month-to-month payment. It is a one-time annual payment that comes to the state. So it is on target as well. So some of the highlights on the revenue side. Property tax, taking a look through our collections and any past due, we're on track and it has a pretty high compliance rate. FEMA, our SAFER grant collections are in its final year. So we are in the last year of that grant and that does expire and complete in March of 2023. We do have a couple other grant reimbursements in the 2022 period that are related to COVID-19 reimbursements. So some is through the Health Services Administration and some is through the FEMA through Public Assistance in the Provider Relief Program. And then I think I mentioned this a little out of order. Our GEMT and transport billings are on budget and on track for the year. Okay. For the expense side, we still have the same budget of 33 million for expenses. We are in 15.4 million for our actuals. We are on track in all 3 of these categories. However, I will say one of the areas we are really watching right now is the salary and benefits line. The majority of 2/3 or more of our budget is personnel and staffing. And one of the things we're looking at is that staffing is looking a little high. So we're looking into those drivers right now. Services is pretty typical and not seeing any areas to note on the services side. And then on the supply side, this also includes our capital purchases like our vehicles and apparatus. And we had a couple things that were scheduled in the budget for 2023 that actually will be arriving in another year. So that one you'll notice looks a little low on the actual side. This one I won't spend a little too much time on. This is in the similar format that we share on the monthly report. So on the June 1, this is what the display looked like. Just a couple notes on particular areas. The IT and data does look a little light. However, this is just the timing of those contracts. So all of our software and IT contracts are related. And in that line, most of our annual payments either haven't posted yet and are scheduled for the Q3 and Q4, or our quarterly payments will post here in the next month or 2. So I anticipate that this one will be on target and will look a little bit better from a budget versus actual spend towards the next quarter or 2. The other 2 areas to note are facilities and fleet. These are 2 areas that we're really taking a look at and just watching. As you know, inflation's been really high. And the 2 areas that we've really experienced that in fleet and facilities is fuel costs and parts and the associated parts for our apparatus. So those are the 2 areas we're really watching, and we're seeing impacts into the expenditure side of both of those divisions. Okay, this goes into a little detail of the items that I already mentioned a little out of order. On the logistics side, we have areas of concern for inflation and supply. On the suppression side, we're taking a little more look in detail into the associated staffing that we're seeing and our personnel expenditures. So we will be coming back. We'll be taking a deeper dive into that and taking a look and seeing if there is anything of note to share that would affect our budget. So we'll come back at a later point. Okay, before I go too far into the audit, did anyone have questions about the first few slides? Okay, so on our audit update, we are currently on a 2-year cycle with the state auditor's office. This audit included both financial statements, the accountability audit, and the single point audit. Single point audit is only required when you exceed federal expenditures in excess of $750,000. So we have that on our schedule this year as well. So for 2020 and 2021, those were the two financial report periods that they audited this year. The audit is complete. It does say on the slide that it will be published at the end of the month. I have looked and they did publish it this last week. So if anyone would like to take a look, it is available on the state website. Commissioner Urbina mentioned this as well, but just to give you a highlight on our audit, all three of our audits for for both years were clean with no findings. Same thing with the single point audit and the accountability audit. And the only highlight that I wanted to share with this experience over the last couple months is the questions that we had from the auditor were great. Some of the auditors that were assigned to us have district experience in multiple decades and has seen this organization evolve over the last couple decades. And my awareness was that we could always improve on our documentation of existing practices, and there might be a couple of financial policies that we will be creating and updating and bringing to the commission for approval as we move through the bond process. So be looking for more financial policy updates. Okay, coming into the next half of the 2022 period, we have a couple key pieces that are coming. We have the certification of election results. This was for the bond. We have our budget hearing scheduled in August and September. We have the bond resolution, the one that will actually be going forward, scheduled for adoption in October. We have our bond reading presentation. That is something that the finance unit will be spending quite a bit of time on here in the next couple months. Or I'm sorry, 2 months. And then in November and December, we will actually go through the bond reading process, publish our official statement, go through and adopt the 2023 budget, and also closing on the bond. So November and December will be a busy time as well. Okay, going into a little more detail on the budget, we do have our budget timeline here and also published. In September, we'll have our first budget hearing. In October, we have the next 2 scheduled budget hearings as well as the revenue hearing. And then in November, we have budget tentatively scheduled in November for adoption. And then the one that does not move is November 28th, the budget due to the assessor's office. And that is required in order to have our levy certified and processed for the next year. And as we mentioned in prior budgets, the note at the bottom, we can have as many additional meetings as the commission sees fit to discuss the 2023 budget. Actually, before I go, does anyone have any questions about the budget timeline? Okay, so moving into the budget structure for 2023, we will be looking at the budget in a very similar fashion to the organizational structure that is under Gig Harbor Fire. So what you see here is the divisions that roll up under an assistant chief. So we have an assistant chief of logistics, assistant chief of operations, health and safety, finance and admin, and then the one that's new for our budget period will be the bond. So we will be sharing the budget in this format, and it will have the corresponding functional areas under each assistant chief and how that works when we go and publish the 2023 budget draft. Okay, does anyone have any questions about this? We'll go in a little more detail as we move into the next few budget meetings as well. Okay, so those are the areas that I had identified to talk about today. Does anyone have any questions or follow-up information that they'd like from these previous slides?
Well, thank you very much. That was a very nice report. Chairman's report, nothing to report. Does anybody have any old business to discuss? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. The communication consulting agreement. This is an extension of Liz Loomis, who took care of helped us with the bond. So Chief Oldenburg, it's all yours.
Yes, Commissioner, as you stated, this is just an extension of Liz Loomis's contract that we've had with her to help us with the bond measure. So what this is extending us through, I believe, November, another 4 months with similar scope of service. And this is to help us with the EMS levy lid lift. So she would help us with that information and similar scope of work to what we did with the bond.
Do we need board approval for this?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we approve the extension of the communications consulting agreement with Liz Loomis as outlined in the agenda.
I'll second that.
Do we actually want to, considering there's only 3 of us here, I'm of the mind, and I know you've already made a motion. I'm wondering if we should wait till the next meeting where the other 2 commissioners are here in case they have any questions or anything like that. Is Chief Oldenburg, is this time sensitive?
I was just going to add that it most likely probably is. If we wait a month, that's probably 25% of the time we have between now and the election. So we are actively waiting to engage with Liz and move forward as quickly as possible. So unfortunately, it kind of is.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sudich,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Urbina.
Yes.
Open public comment. State your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. I have to see who's out there.
Got one attendee, Tom. So if Nick wants to comment, he can raise his hand.
Yeah, I don't see a hand, so. Hearing and seeing none. Do we have any good of the order? Do we have any?
Tom, just real quick, 2 things. One, when the audit came out, I had some questions and I called Crystal and she was immediately able to answer them for me, namely that Washington uses some accounting format that apparently is not the norm nationally. So therefore they have to put in the audit. So that I appreciate her quick explanation for me because I saw that and was kind of alarm bells went off. And then second, the bond became officially official or the results became officially official between last meeting and this one. So again, I just want to thank everybody for their hard work on that.
Any other good of the order? Any special interest, upcoming events? We had a huge turnout for this meeting. Probably one of the largest meetings we've ever had. Lucky for me.
We have these brief meetings when Kevin's not here.
I'm not even going to touch that one. Well, if there's nothing else, our next meeting is September 13th at 5 p.m. Zoom. Chief, how do we stand on the technical aspect of the hybrid meetings?
Yeah, I think we are still waiting some of the equipment for that, but I anticipate Chief Black can probably have an update for you next month. We talked about him having an update this month, but he needs a little bit more time to do some background work on that. So I would probably defer that to next month, but we still have the facility open here and Chief Black is entertaining in person right now.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else, Again, September 13th, 5 p.m. is our next meeting. So hearing nothing else, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.